Welcome back to another episode of Potions and Processing with me, your host, Raven White. In the last episode, we talked about going no contact with my mom, which was kind of a heavy thing to get through and was a lot to process. In this episode, I want to talk about why I started this channel to begin with, and I think I've kind of talked about it throughout the last two episodes, but I want to make it super clear in this one specifically. And because of that, I'm going to be talking about severe and very specific instances of trauma. I'm going to list them here on the screen for you so that you know what you'll be getting into with this episode. You can skip this one entirely if you like. I won't be offended. I will understand. I want to make sure that everybody is safe when they watch my episodes. I want to make sure that you are cared for and that you're not triggered. And as we approach each topic, I will kind of make sure that you have some breather space to get through it as we go. Something that I have asked myself is why here? Why now? You're so far into the future. You're in your 30s. So much of what happened to you happened when you were a minor. So much of what happened to you happened when you were a young adult even. Why aren't you over it? Why can't you move on? Why aren't you past it by now? I would never say those things to anyone else ever. If someone was to give me their story and share these parts of themselves with me, I would never say those things to them. I would never treat them that way. So why would I say those things to myself? I think it comes back to we are often our own worst critics. We're often hardest on ourselves. When we carry these pieces of darkness inside ourselves for so long, along the way it can feel like we've made it out to be a bigger deal than what it is. I have certainly felt like that. I've certainly felt like maybe I just made it out to be worse than it was, or a bigger deal than it was, or that I was being dramatic. But when I lay out all of the pieces and I take a look at my life, I realize, no, that's not the case. This isn't Hulu or Netflix. This is actual real life, and I'm a real life person, and it wasn't dramatized at all. The reason why I'm making my content now is for a multitude of reasons, which I hopefully will do my best to nail down in this video without getting too far off track. One of the reasons is because even though I am in my 30s and pretty well adjusted considering everything that I've been through, there is still so many hurt pieces inside me. In therapy, you might hear terms like your inner child, your inner teen, and those are real parts of you. Even though you're not a child or a teenager anymore, you were at some point. Those parts of you that weren't nurtured, that weren't developed or cared for, directly impact who you become in the future. And there are huge portions, one might say entire portion of my childhood that is just this hurt, quieted, suffering little girl. And I can't change anything that happened to her, but I can speak about what happened to her and hopefully reframe some of the things that happened to her and bring awareness and maybe not justice. I don't think justice is anything I can ever have, but perhaps prevent it from happening to somebody else. And in turn, I can create more empathy for myself and more forgiveness for myself. And not forgiveness in the sense that I did anything wrong, because I didn't, but forgiveness for not being more kind and loving to myself for so long. Another reason that I want to start is because, well, I went no contact with my mom But my mom never got in trouble for anything that she did. She never faced any jail time. She never, got into trouble for anything that she did to me. And that kind of sucks. My stepfather, who was also incredibly abusive, he did. And he gets out soon. And I'm very terrified of that. I am not terrified of him per se, but more so of reliving the fear and trauma of knowing that he's out there and what he was once capable of. The statistics for people who go through severe domestic violence like I went through are not kind. I'm incredibly fortunate to be alive. I know that I talked about that in my first video, but it is something that I think about a lot. And the time that he did get, it will never, ever compensate for the things that he did. And he did not get jail time for many of the things that he did. He didn't even get charged for many of the things that he did, which is something I will never understand. There are no protections for me after he gets out either. There's nothing to keep me safe. There's nothing to keep me from having to deal with the fallout, any anger or animosity or anything that might be there when he gets out. There's nothing to protect me either. And one of the other things that makes me want to share my story is my health. I have a lot of chronic illness and chronic pain now. And one of the reasons that I have so many of my issues and problems is because of the abuse and trauma I endured as a child. There are a lot of studies about what happens to you when you go through trauma and abuse and how it impacts your body. It's very true that the body doesn't forget. In fact, trauma and assault can change your very DNA. It changes the wiring of your brain, how your body reacts to things. And even if you don't recall the memory of the assault or the abuse, your body does. It anticipates it. And so it's a lifelong journey trying to heal things that you don't even remember most of the time. I'm in my 30s now, dealing with the fallout of things that I didn't even do. I was crying just very recently because I am dealing with things that I should not have to. Damage to a body that I did not do. I never had the chance to mess my own body up. Not that you should. But all of the things that I'm dealing with now, I didn't even do to myself. I never even had a chance. And I'm not saying this out of pity or because I want people to feel badly for me, but I want people to understand that it isn't just, oh, this happened to you, you have to heal and move on. No. This is a lifelong thing. This is something that you never ever get over. Now I'm going to talk about some very specific things. When I was very, very young, the earliest memory that I have was right around the time that I was 6. Around the time I was 6 is the first time that I remember being sexually assaulted by my stepfather. And for a long time, I thought it was only like a couple of incidents because it was right around my 7th birthday. And I remember there being like a birthday party and I was going to have friends over, and I was afraid for my friends to be there because I was afraid he was going to hurt my friends too. And so I didn't want my friends to like come over and spend the night because I didn't want them to get hurt either. It was a complicated mix of, I understood what was happening was wrong, but at the same time, I didn't have the understanding that it was wrong enough to vocalize it or to like tell anyone about it. Like I just had this feeling that it wasn't right. But he was my dad. I called him my dad. I loved him as my dad. Surely my dad wouldn't hurt me. For a long time, I thought it was just like isolated incidents. And when we ended up leaving when I was 19, when we finally got out, when I finally talked about it, I was 19, and I held that inside me for like 12 years. And I was afraid to tell anybody because it had finally, the hardest part about trauma is how brain foggy it makes you. I have pockets of memory that have been so disjointed and so disconnected because your brain just blocks things out that it doesn't think you are able to handle and put together. And it saves it for a time down the line when it thinks that you will be able to handle it and be able to put it together. When we got out at 19 was the first time that I had talked about it, because my parents had had a fight that day. My parents had had a fight, and I was so upset about what had been said. I'd been upset about many things that had been happening for a while. I'd been a pretty complacent child growing up. I was very good-natured. I liked to obey. I liked to please my parents, and I was the oldest, so I was often taking care of my other siblings. I was a good child, even though I was not a loved child. But once I hit my 17, 18, 19, I was becoming more rebellious. My types of abuse had changed, and I was becoming increasingly aware that it just didn't seem like other families. Like, we just didn't seem like other families. And there was so much hypocrisy in our home. There was so many lies that our parents were telling us. I have to circle back a little bit, and I apologize, I get a bit mixed up when I talk about this, but it's really hard. The first time that I remember happening was around the time that I was 6, right before my 7th birthday, and I thought that it was isolated incidents. And I remember a time when I was older, and he told me that it had to stop happening because if someone was going to find out, that he would get into a lot of trouble, and I would also get into a lot of trouble, and he threatened me and said that he would hurt me if I ever said anything. And I remembered that, and I carried it with me for 12 years. But when I was 19, there was a particularly bad fight one day. The anger and rage that had built up in me over time just spilled out. And my stepfather had left for the day. And usually when he left, he took one of my siblings with him. It was a strategy to make sure that my mother wouldn't leave, because she surely wouldn't leave and leave a kid behind. But he left that day and he didn't take one with him. So I went to my mother and I told her that I was having sex with my stepfather, because I didn't know the R word. It wasn't in my vocabulary. I didn't even know that word existed. That's how sheltered I was. And I didn't understand. I didn't know anything about consent. At 19, I didn't know what that word was. So that's what I said, because I didn't know. That's what I thought that it was, even when I was 6, 7. To bring this story short, she ended up calling the police, and they took us from the home. And that's how we ended up leaving the house. We left because I finally said something. Through a lot of intensive therapy, I have had the fog lifted and learned that that experience was going on until I hit puberty, until I started getting my period. So for about close to probably 6 years, I was being assaulted and abused and raped by my stepfather. The inflammation that lives in my body now, the joints that are inflamed, that scream on a daily basis, the deterioration in my back, the buzzing and vibration that lives under my skin, the tremors, the high cortisol levels, the degeneration, the hormone problems, the infertility. It all can be stemmed back to those years that were stolen from me. And not just those years, but all of the abuse, all of the pressure, all of the pain that I was put under, all of those things that I was made to endure. It all adds up because the body doesn't forget, and the body copes the best way that a body can, and the body doesn't necessarily do it well. Which is why I'm a big advocate for therapy, because therapy can really help you to begin to break through and retrain your body and your brain and heal those things. And I'm grateful that I finally got into it when I did, so that I could start to retrain it. And would I still have these problems? I don't know. Maybe I would, but I think I would have a much better chance. And I think that I would not have it to the severity that I do if I hadn't had all of those awful things happen to me when I was a child. So why do I have my YouTube? I have it for a multitude of reasons. Because I want to advocate, because I want to be able to tell my story, because I don't know how much time I have left. And I hate to be fatalist about it, but I don't. I don't know what diagnoses are waiting for me on the horizon. In the last couple of years, I have felt pieces of myself disappear. I have felt changes in the way that I am able to do things. I felt weakness and pain shift into my day-to-day, and it is hard to compensate for. I can't undo anything that has been done, but I can make the most out of what I have been given, and I intend to do so. The hardest thing to swallow for me is that looking back, I know that the signs were there. The signs were there for so many things that I experienced and I went through, and nobody did anything. Nobody said anything. No one intervened, and I don't understand why. I don't know if it was fear or if people just didn't know what to do. And I don't know how to change that besides tell you what the signs were and how to look for them yourself, and maybe offer you some insight as to what you could possibly do when you have a chance. Now, I know this was really heavy, and I appreciate you so much for sitting with me through it, and I hope that you're okay. I hope you take some deep breaths and you take a walk, and don't let it get under your skin. Don't hold too much to this. Remember, this is my story. It's not yours. And if you do identify with it, I want you to remember that you're here and you're alive and you can breathe, okay? So take some nice, deep breaths. It's going to be okay. And we're gonna figure it out. This has been episode 3 of Potions and Processing, and I appreciate you sitting with me through it because I know it was a heavy one. Remember, we may be different species, but we're all part of the same family. So please be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I'll see you in the next video.